Very good. We have a quorum today, so we begin the EDIC meeting for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have 4 items on the agenda. Number 1 is to approve the EDIC meeting minutes of 8/26/25. We have those in front of us. If anybody has any changes or corrections, otherwise we would accept a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, commercial redevelopment pilot. Jim Gilmore will get us started. Jim.
We've discussed this over the last several years about having an additional policy that would deal with commercial redevelopment where an area really wasn't blighted or underdeveloped. But in the cases where we were trying to encourage more, density in keeping with kind of longstanding city policies of trying to promote more infill. And so I just added a little bit of language after each one of these from the last meeting. And so these are the different characteristics that we would look at when we receive applications. I note that the policy that you have to meet some of the following, characteristics, so you wouldn't have to meet all of these, but have to meet at least maybe hopefully more than one, but these would be the characteristics that we'd look at to determine whether or not. I haven't gotten real specific, so we can have some, leeway in terms of the type of projects, because we don't know, if everything will fit into a nice category that needs to be, 10% more, or 20% more, or it needs to be $50 a square foot. I haven't tried to put those kinds of numbers in, and so we would just kind of evaluate it on a case-by-case basis.
So on page 4, the 5th bullet point where it says consistent with city plans, obviously we're redoing the land development code, and so that's kind of what you're talking about there, correct? That we wanted to make sure, and like you were saying, you haven't made it specific because we're still working on that?
Exactly. And so the main characteristics, you'd want a higher value and higher density than you had before. So, if someone's tearing down a one-story kind of strip mall and they're bringing in a mixed-use, project, and it's not really blighted, but you get some higher density, that would be something that would be a positive for the community. Opportunities for economic development. Maybe there's not a primary sector business in there right away, but there's some opportunity that the building design where it's going to be attractive to a primary sector business that might locate there. Mixed-use development, the shared parking. Anytime you share parking, you get more density, and you don't have parking lots that are vacant all the time. If you have a mix of, say, residential where people are gone in the day and office where people are there in the day, then you can kind of share parking. So there's opportunities for that. And then desirable land uses, you wanted to be consistent with, land use plans as well as, long-term city plans on that 5th bullet. And then if it has sort of improved design, a better form, public amenities, that would also be something that we would be trying to encourage with this policy. I noted in the last, kind of beyond those bullets, is that, we don't want applications that would provide an unfair competition to other, businesses. So, that would be something that we always look at with pilot applications. So, just want to get your thoughts on this. I know you looked at it the last meeting. I tried to add a little bit more description in what I meant in each of those 6 bullets at this meeting. So,
Well, and I'll start out the conversation. I think it's great to have this. I guess, Mike, this kind of goes back to the same thing with the planning department, having them review some of these for us before it gets to us. Does that make sense? Because go ahead, John.
And I did send it to Nicole last week. I don't know if she has any comments yet, but I don't know if you any thoughts or.
And I guess to me, it's just, this is the beginning conversation, and just, I just think we've kind of got a lot of things that we're working on that work with the land development code, and this is just part of it. And I do think this kind of goes back to the same thing where we have an order, and the last stop is us. So we make sure it goes through engineering and planning and all those things before it gets to us. So I don't know if anybody else has any comments or questions, but is this what you had envisioned, Jim? Was this is this is conversation, and this will eventually be added into the plan? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you're ready for it yet, but if you want to take one more meeting to take a look at it, it's kind of up to you. Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the way it looks now compared to some of our other policies. And as far as, we've always coordinate with planning, and you mentioned at the last meeting, like to have sort of a checklist, and I think that's a good idea in some ways. In some ways, it doesn't work because we have primary sector businesses that may come in. I'll use border states for an example. They say, we've got this site, we're going to build a big warehouse, we're going to employ X number of people, and they don't have a design, they haven't hired an engineer, they haven't hired an architect, but they're trying to decide, do we go to Fargo or we go to Sioux Falls? And that's the next step. And so sometimes we know it's in zoned industrial, we know they're going to have to follow the code, and we go ahead and approve that. And then the final approval and planning, engineering, and all of that comes next. And so I think there's a series of approvals. Sometimes they're concurrently, sometimes you are first, you're not last.
Well, and this kind of is interesting because it brings up the discussion of the data center, and with big companies with confidentiality, it's an issue, and so they like to not have people know, everything they're going to do. At the flip side, we want to. This is literally going on in Harwood, where the planning department and the opportunity for public comment, and so it's kind of interesting. I would say this applies to us a great deal, and the debate you have to have is, are we approving something sometimes without knowing the full story? Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. No, I think in the primary sector, sometimes you don't know what exactly the building's going to look like, but you do know they have to follow the rules. We have rules in Fargo on stormwater and what the buildings, how big it can be, and how many parking spots and all of that.
But I can give you an example. In Harwood, there aren't any rules.
Well, exactly.
So imagine how tempting it is to not locate in Fargo where there are rules versus you can go right next door where there aren't any rules.
I
So,
think
anyway.
you're right that on those primary sector businesses, they may go somewhere else if we put too many rules up front.
Yeah, no, that's, is anybody, I apologize for talking so much, but if there's any comments, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I think what we're trying to get to is an indication of the things that we would consider. Given the example that I've seen of the data center, well played by the company is, they came to Fargo, I think they asked, they said, oh boy, that's going to be expensive. Then went to Harwood, and that's a profit-motivated business, I guess.
I will give you a couple of comments. So former Commissioner Cosgrove, we're still in the first inning of that, so I wouldn't be making anything. The other thing, actually, Jim Gilmore and I both went to their site, and it was loud. Do you remember that, Jim?
Yeah.
So it's
Oh, boy.
the people in Harwood. I would encourage the city to set up a thing where they have noise canceling headphones for all the residents, because we were there. To give you an example how loud it is, if you've ever a grain dryer, if you're a farm person, this is 1,000 grain dryer fans running 24 hours a day, and so they say it's quiet, but Jim and I were there, and Jim drove, and so it was. He's an excellent driver, so we had a fun trip. But it was, but to see it in person and to hear it in person, it was great. So I apologize for getting off topic. Go ahead, Jim.
So I don't know if this policy, you think it should be moved forward? I know we don't have several members here, and so, and Lucas, I don't know if you think we should just take another meeting to take a look at this.
Go ahead, John.
I do have one question on this particular topic, Jim. If we'd be looking at approving something, would we be requiring certain thresholds, like certain square footage, certain costs, certain X? I just think that that's really important. Or maybe it's a percentage of something to where it's like, if they know what they're looking at from a pro forma basis, and there's some sort of a percentage where it's like X amount of dollars or something to that effect, to where, a lot of times in these situations, what I'm hearing is there's different departments not critiquing it, but there's different departments. Sometimes you have to work with this department before you work with this department. And maybe it's an impossible ask to try to get it to where it's, you're probably never going to have all of the details before it gets to us, but maybe the material ones, I guess, would be my only request in something like this.
And so if it's okay, Jim, I'd just like to continue this to the next meeting, and also to make sure we have the planning department's perspective on this. To give you an example, CZB is helping us with our long-range plan, and they've evaluated some of these sites and talked about exactly what we're talking about. And so I'd like to be able to, like you're talking about evaluation, to start doing that and having somebody help us with this. I think that would be a good thing. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll continue this. Do we need to have a motion for that to continue, Jim?
No, we don't. And
Okay.
if you do have some comments, John, appreciate your comment. And, one idea would be to say we want you to be $50 a square foot per site, but maybe instead we say we want you to be at least 20% above the city average or something like that. So it's a floating number that we would evaluate on. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be multiple ways. It could be a certain dollar amount per square foot or a total dollar amount, like this or that. I guess the biggest thing that I would think about from the other side of the chair, so that maybe the developers, is just a lot of things tend to be, it takes time to build things, right? You have to go through a lot of processes. And if we can help make it make it simple to understand and make it so there's less back and forth. I don't know what that entails. That could be a multitude of different things, but I guess the key would be is if we're easy to do business with, I think that's kind of should be the North Star here.
John, I'm going to give you the gold star for the day, because actually that's what the goal of our land development code is to make it expectations for developers a standard. And so they don't have to have a special every time. They know what the standards are, if that makes sense to you. So I do think that's good. And so this is all good conversation. But we'll just continue this. And if you have any additional comments for Jim, feel free to contact him. Otherwise, we'll move on to 3. And 3 is the Cass County proposed policy update. Jim, do you want to help us with that?
Yeah, just landed in my email about 7:15 this morning, and so maybe Robert Wilson can give me a little more of an update. So I don't know if the county's adopted this or they're thinking about adopting it. Maybe that's a question for Robert.
For their review and consideration. If there are any folks that see items on that they might want to share perspectives with county commissioners in advance of that, please just be mindful that again they likely have not seen this yet either, because our next meeting is the 6th, I believe it is, and our packet won't go out until middle of next week. So wanted you to see the draft as I've worked with the chair on it and realize that this is a work in progress.
Right. That's great. Thank you. And so this was for informational purposes only, and so that's what it is at this point.
Yeah, I guess I'd like if you do have comments on it, maybe I'll just give you my observations on it. The first comment about primary sector businesses, I think it's a positive that they're open to looking at beyond 5 years, because recently it's been just kind of a hit and miss thing, whether or not they're going to support it or not. It kind of seems kind of random when you go over there. Are they going to support this one or not support that one? And so there's sort of signaling that they're more open to primary sector businesses. And as you know, most of the ones that you have approved are, 5 years, and so, they don't even go to the county. But when we have had ones go to the county, we have gotten, support for that. So I hope that continues when we've got good jobs. The non-primary sector projects, really, that they really don't want to go beyond 5 years. on that. I think maybe one question for the county might be is if, you know, are they saying that they wouldn't participate at all, or are they saying that they'll participate for the first 5 years? That's probably a clarification I'd like to kind of get from the county. But I think we've had a lot of very good projects where we've eliminated some blight, and I wish the county was more open to these, you know, large tax increment financing districts that do, you know, clear out a lot of blight, and the long term have been a really benefit for the city, the school district, and the county. The support for federal low-income housing, I'm pleased they recognize that if they don't support those kind of projects, we simply won't get them. And that low-income housing is a desperate need, you know, particularly senior housing in our community. You know, the county has been supportive of most of those. Again, one example of a project that they didn't support and it ended up not being built. And then, you know, the last one, again, the 50%, I'd like to get a little more clarification on that, and I'll send some comments to, you know, Mr. Grinberg again. But I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that in addition to what I've outlined there.
I think that's, go ahead, John.
I do have just a couple of questions, and I appreciate that we're all working towards trying to figure out kind of what arena we're going to be in and how we're going to set these up. But do we have a definition of primary sector?
Actually, that's the EDC. They do have I hate to call on you out of the blue, but we do have a specific definition, and so that's their reason. So we follow their leadership on that. And so once again, I apologize for calling on you, but that's the risk you take for coming to the meeting.
No, that's fine. Happy to address the inquiry on the table. So I guess there's a couple different ways to look at it. The state's got a definition of primary sector, and then I think, you know, maybe less defined is kind of our definition of primary sector within this marketplace. So the state defines it as any business that's adding value or knowledge to a good or service, and then selling that outside of the trade area, which in this case is outside of North Dakota for the state, and at a threshold of 70% or more. So they want to see at least 70% of a business's sales originating from outside of the state of North Dakota. And there has to be a value add component. So it couldn't be like a commodity where you're selling a commodity that you've done nothing to other than maybe package it. I would say for our marketplace, we're looking for that same impact outside of our trade area, which would be kind of the Cass and Clay County MSA. So I think we would look at if you know 90% of a business's sales were Hillsboro, we probably wouldn't necessarily consider that primary sector because it's still within the trade area and the catchment area. So you know, our threshold is similar. We kind of look at it similar to the state, 50% or more of sales outside of kind of a surrounding kind of labor shed, which would be 11 or 12 counties.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? So the EDC, it's some kind of number, is it in the high 60s, the percentage of your projects that are in the city of Fargo?
I would say, just off the top of my head, it's probably closer to 70%.
So I just wanted to repeat that for everybody. The EDC does economic development for our region. 70% of the projects are in the city of Fargo. And so I think that's an important thing. You hear a lot of noise from a lot of different people about economic development, but at the end of the day, we are the center of economic development, not just for the county. We are the center for this region. Fargo is, not Cass County, not West Fargo, not Harwood, it's Fargo.
Paragraph tax increment financing, the last one. Kind of read that several times, and I'm not sure what it means. Recognizing that incentives up to 5 years can be approved by municipalities, but then the statement goes on, tax incentive proposals not aligning with the categories listed above will not be granted for more than 50% of any time period.
No, that's excellent. So maybe you can bring that up, Jim, with if you have questions. Obviously, it's a work in progress, so they'll be able to get more specific answers for that. So that's why I appreciate you being here at the meeting. You can kind of bring some of our questions back, and I'm sure Jim will represent us too, so.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you being here.
I see the confusion there, because does that mean you get to be 50% exempt for the full-time period? Or
Right.
100% exempt for 50% of the time period?
I was not aware there was going to be any math involved with the meeting today, John. Okay, but lots of good discussion, and this is a work in progress, so if that's okay, we'll move on. Number 4 is previous meeting applications. Jim?
The two applications you looked at the last meeting, one was that row house project up by NDSU. You'd recommended approval contingent on them getting a building permit. They've been in the building permit process for about a month, which isn't that unusual, but it's kind of working its way through. It will be on City Commission agenda on Monday to approve it contingent on them, completing that building permit process. So that's an update on that one. The second one is the project that's proposed along NP Avenue, 11th Street. It'd be a 260-unit apartment building. I provided you a little bit of information with that. If you may recall, the rents weren't, super low. They were actually maybe a little closer to market, and it was a relatively large project with very high cost per unit. Because it's a for-profit group and it doesn't really aim at that, very low income, I have sent that to our financial advisor for their review. We'll treat it more as just a downtown housing project, and they'll look at that, whether or not it's very complicated financing, and so I'm not sure when I'll get that report back. It may or may not be ready for your November meeting, and actually, your October meeting, and then I'm probably won't be here in October, so maybe we'll just put that one off until November. And
So can I ask you, Jim, none of it is going to, it's going to be market rate housing? There's not going to be any low-income senior or any type of that in the whole project?
Well, they're going to get low-income housing tax credits at a 4% level. But for instance, a 2-bedroom apartment, I think, was $1,300 to $1,400 a month, which is very similar to what the market rate is in Fargo. So it's, we're used to seeing ones from Beyond Shelter where they're bringing in apartments that are at $700 a month and serving people that are probably below 50% of the median income. This is aimed at people below 80% of the median income, which is, maybe around a $40,000 income. So it's not, for the very low income, it's more of a middle income apartments.
So it's affordable housing for people that can afford more? Or that's what's confusing, because compared to New York City, if you built this project, then that rent would be very reasonable. So it's kind of confusing.
I think if you compared to their rents to other downtown apartments, it might be $200 a month less. So it's more affordable, but you can probably find even more affordable housing in other areas of the community. So it's
Very good. So that was just an update. So if anybody has any questions about that, otherwise, it's 1:25 and it's a beautiful afternoon. So thank everybody for attending, and we are adjourned. Have a good day.